Will the early crypto buyers be making millions or billions of dollars, or are we perhaps maybe a little bit later within this current rally than I think a lot of people consider? At least from what I see on crypto Twitter, I see a lot of the same parroting of a similar phrase, which is we're still early, or early buyers are going to make billions of dollars. Well, I don't think that we're actually that early as of now. And as we go over in today's video, there are several signals that do suggest that, well, while one, Bitcoin is still in a strong position as of right now, this current rally is likely finding its culmination end very soon, very soon. So I want to bring us back to the 5-day setup right here. It's a very, 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 very simple setup. And I'll explain kind of the purpose of it in a moment. But the setup is this. Whenever Bitcoin closes above that red moving average, which is a 5 exponential moving average, it initiates an open long. And when Bitcoin comes back down and closes below that same moving average, then it closes that long. And if we look at this strategy throughout the full history of Bitcoin, you can see that it does have just over about a 39.25% strike rate, very, very high profit factor. Obviously, that is being massively overweight or over-indexed by the early results over here. But even in the more recent ones, we have seen multiple 50% moves on this particular strategy. This strategy really is just designed to catch on to long-term trending movements for Bitcoin, because pretty much every rally begins and ends with the 5 exponential, at least as far as like that current momentous move. Of course, it also works to the downside as well, but in this case, we're obviously more focused on the upside. Anyways, this strategy fired off an entry way back on over here on the 2nd of October. And that was when Bitcoin was trading at 62,800. Well, if we take that time to the current time, we can see that at the end of this next period, which will end in 2.5 days, so Sunday night, that'll be day number 70. And we have thus far seen close to 60% gains, from current open to current price. In fact, if we go all the way to the top, it's going to be over 60%. Now, I want to bring you back into history and just kind of look at what we have seen for this signal when it's played out very, very well. And then I'll kind of let you, decide. I'll let you decide. You can decide whatever the hell you want. But perhaps this will give a little more color as kind of, where we are within the current rally. So the last time that we saw one of these big signals really play out in the intended fashion was back here in January. This one going for 75 days in total, 75 days from open to close, that is. So technically the high of the rally was actually earlier than that. And it was about a 60% gainer actually right there. So not bad. Then we can go back a little bit earlier than that to October of 2023. This one opening at a price of like 28,000 and closing at 42,500. This one taking 90 days and returning about 50%. So 90 days, 75 days. Okay, let's see if we can find, another big winners using this strategy right here. These ones are big winners, but they do not go on for that long. Let's see. Yeah, 45 days. I'm guessing this is also about 45 days. Then we have to go back to the beginning of, the sort of mid portion of the last macro bull market, or massive cycle, I guess you could say. And this one, again, from open to close, 64.5% gain. Did trade higher than that at some point. Absolutely, yes. Took 80 days. Okay, so we have 75, 80, 90. Let's see what these ones did over here. We have a couple more. This one about 41 days, so not super interesting. This one over here about 60 days. Again, a little bit on the lower end of that scale. And then from there, the last major big winner, this one about 120 days. So we have seen it go on, for quite some time. We could obviously go back further in history, but I can just spoil the surprise for you. I've already done that, and the results are still, pretty similar around about day number 80 to 85. So keep in mind right now that, again, we are technically on day number 68. Day number 70 will be on Sunday. And what does that imply? Well, my takeaway from this is that, this current rally is very close to being done and entering into an actual correction phase. Whether it's within the next 2 weeks or the next 4 weeks, I don't know. But whenever we do see Bitcoin close below that red moving average, which as of right now is the low of this current 5-day at just under $96,000, that is going to be indicative of a, at least like a month-long sideways, I'd imagine, or like 3 to 6 weeks, let's say. Anyways, moving on from there, I do want to also account for something else, and then we'll kind of talk about a little bit more about the short term for Bitcoin, but the witches are back at it again. The moons here for Bitcoin, the moon strategy, very, very funny, although has returned positive, positive sums over time. Let me just bring it up right here, or do I have it? No, yes, there we go. You can see, looking at the daily for Bitcoin here, this strategy just longing when there's a new full moon and then closing at the end of that. I know it sounds fucking crazy, but the data is what the data is. It's close to a 60% strike rate. It's always funny to bring this up because you can see people's brains melt, because me too, because when I see something like this, I immediately think bullshit. And then I ask myself, have I traded better than this? I mean, this is pretty fucking good results. So, hard to argue against that. Anyways, Bitcoin, or not Bitcoin, but the moons are about to fire off a new signal. When? On Sunday. So Sunday will be a new full moon. And, if we look at the last few ones, they obviously have been winners. This one firing off from middle of November, having a pretty decent gain right there. I think about $10,000 or 12 and almost 0.5%. One before that, also a winner right here. And while the prior 1, 2, 3, 4 were actually all losers, it should be known that, from that actual moon to the next couple of weeks, or sorry, at least the next week to 10 days, Bitcoin actually did have a nice bounce there, to be fair. Again, doesn't always work out perfectly. This one over here, obviously terrible, but, throughout the full history of Bitcoin, hasn't had bad results, which I do just always find very, very surprising. So yeah, if Bitcoin does once again play out one of these bullish moons, if you want to call it that, it sounds fucking funny, but, if it does, the average winning trade using this strategy has returned close to 14.5%. The average losing trade loses an average of about 6.80% is what I mean to say. So if we do assume that Bitcoin's somewhere around here by Sunday, what would 15% look like on top of current price action? That'd put Bitcoin somewhere around 116 to 117 to the downside. For the couple weeks to follow, I guess. 680 to the downside would put Bitcoin back down around, 94,000 probably at that point. I mean, Bitcoin's just going to, come back down and actually spend a lot of time, consolidating between the mid 80s and $100,000 region. But for right now, the ball is still in the Bulaw's court. In fact, as I went over in yesterday's video as well, I still have to be cautiously bullish here, just based off of, everything that we look at, as well as all the price probabilities and statistics that we looked at in yesterday's video. But I can tell you straight up, I wake up in the morning and I'm waiting for the day where I can actually turn bearish, and it's not yet, but it does feel like it's really fucking close. At least for like a short-term type thing, not necessarily a long-term type thing. I still think that comes a little bit later. But looking at the daily right here for CME, again, Bitcoin is closing out for the week, actually on CME today as well. Bitcoin is basing off of the median once again. So, looking at this, does Bitcoin have a chance to actually try for a breakout today? Yeah, it does. Breakout would be confirmed above about 104,200, or just basically anywhere above yesterday's high as well. That would do it for me on CME. By contrast, however, an early warning signal that, Bitcoin is going to enter into a sideways consolidation, sideways and down, that is, and likely but close off this pretty epic trade that started from early October right here, would be if Bitcoin does come back down and especially close below the median today on CME, which is 99,500. Keep in mind that there's a slight premium over spot price action. So, if you're going to be looking at that, look at CME. Anyways, as long as Bitcoin's above there, have to, or at least I have to, continue to be cautiously bullish here. Again, it feels like a guilty pleasure at this point, but it is what it is. I mean, this is still just an uptrend right here. In fact, when we go over to our next chart, we can see that the daily stochastic momentum is going to have a chance to continue to the upside today, somewhat remaining within the bullish control zone there, although highly skeptical of this one. But if Bitcoin closes today above 100,850, it will indeed flip back onto the upside, which I do think is rather interesting. Also, on that note, if we go over here, I'd always like to look at, corollaries for Bitcoin when when I'm looking for something obvious, and usually at least one chart will have something, and I think that one chart for today is, where is it on my list? It's Bitcoin versus the Japanese yen, actually. Now, if you're not familiar with this pair or why it matters, I mean, why it matters is probably best explained by just looking at the chart history. This chart actually plays slightly more technically than the US dollar chart. In fact, if you were looking at this chart from this past major consolidation that Bitcoin put in, around March, April, May, you can see that this correction brought price action back down almost perfectly to the 2021 highs, actually. In fact, that whole consolidation was essentially above the 2021 highs, whereas on Bitcoin USD, that was like slightly higher, but it didn't flow as nicely. It didn't play as technically compared to this chart. Anyways, looking at Japanese yen right here on the daily time frame, doesn't take a fucking genius to see this right here. I mean, Bitcoin does have, again, that nice higher low structure, and technically speaking, this would be an ascending triangle right here. An ascending triangle, which does have a higher probability of a breakout than a breakdown. Obviously, again, that just comes back down to trend. When you have higher lows plus the same highs, buyers getting more aggressive, sellers theoretically waning in their power, and so more likely to break out to the upside here. Again, need to see Bitcoin close above whatever the hell this ungodly number is, which is like 15,450 yens or some shit on the daily. And then, yeah, there is an implied target all the way up here towards 16,000, or sorry, it's not 16,000, 16,644,426 yens, highly inflated yens. But yeah, and I think that equates to about 108, 109 on Bitcoin versus the dollar, actually. So I did think that was rather interesting. But here's the thing. There are a couple of the things in the background as well that make me massively consider that Bitcoin actually very well could put in a more prolonged consolidation sideways and down here. And it doesn't necessarily have to do with Bitcoin. It has to do with the alts. When we look at XRP, for example, actually I have it on this one right here. Again, long term, I do think that this one will trade higher, but it is in a more prolonged, corrective consolidation here. I mean, this again is coming after a absolutely epic movement of nearly 500% to the upside over literally less than a month, like 28 days, which is just, I mean, it's probably going to take some time going sideways and down here. And in the short term, very likely does come back down to about 211. Don't necessarily think that it's going to break down from there, but at least like a wick down around there. By the same token, we can go look at Solana. Solana also, kind of just barely holding on here. We do see Solana, could very easily come back down to about 211, 212-ish region. Again, I don't think it's going to break down significantly from there. I think, you generally just get like a wick down around there, and then probably an attempt at a higher low. But, in the short term, that would imply a little bit of downside. And if we go over to, I think, Ethereum as well, actually Ethereum a lot more strong than the past two. So Ethereum is retaining its position in the, I think we have to rename it the Big Four at this point, but still playing out that hidden bullish evidence that we saw from a couple days ago. So I guess this one would be a little bit closer to Bitcoin, or a little bit more on the stronger side of the equation. Bitcoin obviously still more or less leading the party, playing out that same hidden bullish evidence here. But here's the thing. When you have volatility this low and everything else that we spoke about prior to this video, as well as yesterday's video and even the videos before that, because a lot of this is repetitive, you kind of have to put you kind of have to put the puzzle piece together, right? Very low BBWP. So an explosive move is coming like very soon. And an explosive move, when I talk about it, like the last time that we saw BBWP around this low was before the October or the end of October / early November rally. That was a fucking tremendous rally. So, big, quote unquote, big move incoming. We know from this setup over here that we don't expect this current one to really go, I would say, more than another, even like 20 days from now. It would probably be like a bit pushing it, but technically it has gone on longer. That's the only time in history that we have seen it go above 90 days, however, was the 120. So very much an outlier right there. And of course, what else? And then, of course, the moon's, funnily enough, lining up with that would be a 2-week signal. So that kind of takes us into the end of December. And then, of course, we also have, if I actually forgot to bring it up, but remember just calling back to yesterday's statistics, if I bring up my my little spreadsheet over here, we can see for December, Well, the average returns for December have produced about 31%. So I'd put Bitcoin in the $120 range. Again, that does kind of line up with a few of the things that we looked at earlier. And on top of that, the Bitcoin December highs typically come when within the context of a macro uptrend, typically come around that third week. So right before Christmas, actually. So on average, on day number 19. If you look at the data right here, most of them coming quite late within the month, especially, well, actually, I was going to say especially during halving years or election years. But now that I recognize it, twice it did come, basically at like the last couple of days of the month. But once in 2012, which you might argue is just, very, 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 very far away from where we're, currently at right now, was on the 14th, which is actually going to be tomorrow. So fair enough. Again, I bring up these statistics, one, so that we can track them over time, and two, because, well, if you've been paying any attention to this channel for the past 6 months since we really started to speak about this like very frequently, they've been working out almost to the T on every fucking month, which is not even how it's designed to work out anyways, which is why it's so surprising to me. Because obviously you expect variance when you're looking at these sort of, indications as, they're calculated as averages. So we expect variance around there. But for the past, I think 3 or 4 months, we've literally seen it almost to the day every fucking time, which is just crazy, So we'll continue to update on that. But yeah, I think that's a good place for me to be leaving off on this video. Is there anything else that I have? No, I don't think I have anything else. A little bit longer than what I did expect. But, I do think that all these things need to be kind of, compiled together. So just wrapping up my thoughts here. Not that you should give a fuck about my thoughts. You should give a fuck about, what the data and the statistics do say, and then make your own interpretations. But my own thoughts would be Bitcoin, still more likely to move to the upside here than the downside. If you put a gun in my head and said, make a call, I would say there's likely one more explosive move to the upside, somewhere between 110 to 120, something like that. And then expect, a pretty deep correction, or okay, I shouldn't say pretty deep correction, but you should expect a bull market correction, which can be 20% very easily. And from $120,000, that would bring Bitcoin back down below 100,000, which would be a fucking tremendous move for sure. So do keep that in mind. Of course, I will be wrong on that, and it'll be time to reconsider these ideas, because a lot of this hinges upon the fact that Bitcoin is kind of in a strong position right here. Bitcoin comes back down below today's low and closes the daily, especially below the median on the daily HPDR for CME. Something else going on, perhaps a correction actually does emerge from here, and we're actually already done with the rally. That is also somewhat reasonable to expect as well. But until that happens, you're going to continue to hear me say the same shit. A lot of this is for myself as well, just because, I like to remind myself for my own, in this case, this would be more like a more long-term investing sort of, analysis. But yeah. Anyways, good place maybe for me to be leaving off. As always, I want to wish you the best. Take care. Much love. And how was that for you? That was interesting. See you next time.